Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual event space at Books and Books, your locally owned independent bookstore in Miami, Florida. Today, we're thrilled to be in partnership with our forever BFF, Miami Book Fair, to present one of our local authors, Sita Singh, in celebration of her debut picture book, Birds of a Feather, as well as Stephanie Fizer Coleman, the wonderful illustrator. We're so thankful to have you here with us today supporting these creators. And we know we have guests from all over the world, so it would be fun if you guys could drop a note in the chat and let us know where you're watching from. I'm going to read Sita and Stephanie's bios, and then I will tell you a little bit about your screen, and we'll get things started. So Sita Singh was born and raised in India and moved to the United States in 1999. She currently lives in South Florida with her husband, 3 children, and an immensely cute and curious dog. An architect in the past, Sita now enjoys writing heartwarming picture books with a South Asian backdrop. When Sita isn't reading or writing, she can be found trying new recipes in the kitchen, experimenting with food photography, walking with the dog, or movie marathoning with her family. Stephanie Fizer Coleman thrives on creating beautiful textural illustrations of her furry and feathered friends. Having grown up in a rural area, she is inspired by nature in all its grandeur. She is the illustrator of Nanita's Big World and lives in West Virginia with her husband and 2 dogs. So a couple of things about this screen as you see it now. In the bottom right corner, we have a question. We have the Ask a Question button. This is what we're going to use for the Q&A portion, the audience Q&A portion. Questions in the chat will get lost, so this is definitely where you want to put them, not in the chat, but in the Ask a Question button. And then, of course, right below me, arguably the most important button of the day, this big green button is where you can purchase copies of Birds of a Feather. We offer shipping worldwide, store locally, store pickup, and then also all of our copies will be signed by Sita. So that's it for me for now, and I will see you in a couple of moments.
Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're tuning in from different parts of the world. Thank you so much for taking time out on a Saturday and joining Stephanie and myself for celebrating our picture book, Birds of a Feather. Yay! I'm so excited and I'm so grateful to be here. And I do have a lot of people to thank for that. So please bear with me. Thank you, Books and Books, for hosting this event. Thanks to Kathy Curtin of Flamingo Gardens for putting together a wonderful, wonderful surprise for all of you. I'm grateful to all my family and friends. They've tuned in from everywhere. My cousins, my aunts, uncles, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, my nieces, nephews, my friends from school and from college. Thank you for joining me here. I don't have enough words to thank my parents, Mommy and Papa, to whom this book is dedicated to. I'm just blessed to be your daughter. And I know you are watching with Kanu, my brother and his family. And I know you're all beaming with pride. So thank you so much. I also know that my mother-in-law, who's always wanted to see my book in print, is also watching me from up there. And I know she's blessing me. A huge thanks to my husband, Shalu, for pushing me to pursue writing. To my children, Shreya, Saloni, and Shivraj, for being my strength and my greatest source of inspiration. I love you 3 so much. I'm grateful to Samantha for seeing the potential in my story. Thanks, Sam, for being here today. I'm grateful to my critique partners, yay, Ventura Critique Group, for always being there for me through the highs and lows of this publishing journey, for always giving their unique perspectives to my story, and for being my biggest cheerleaders. I'm also extremely grateful to the SCBWI and the Kidlit community for their love and support. It's an amazing community, and I found so many mentors, and I've made lasting friendships here. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of that. This so giving and supportive Kidlit community. Thanks to my picture book scribblers family. I've asked them such silly questions at all times, and they've just been there for me, and I appreciate each and every one of you. A big thanks to my agent, Natalie Lacusel, for holding my hand through this entire bookmaking process. A heartfelt gratitude to my editor, Liza Kaplan, at Flamingo Books for believing in me and for believing in the White Peacock. And I'm grateful to Cheryl Ising, to the art director Lee Ellis, to the graphic designer Monique Sterling, to my publicist Tessa, and the entire team at Flamingo Books for making this dream come true. And last but not the least, Birds of a Feather wouldn't be what it is if it weren't for Stephanie's gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations. She has given wings to my words. She's given wings to the White Peacock, and I'm forever grateful to her for that. and without further ado, I'm going to now read the book. So let's go. I'm going to read. Yeah, let's share the cover and the yeah.
There it is.
Okay, this book is Birds of a Feather, written by Sita Singh, illustrated by Stephanie Fizer Coleman. As you can see, Birds of a Feather. Yeah. This is dedicated to my parents, Kokila and Navneet, for their blessings and encouragement. And Stephanie has dedicated this book to her husband, for Seth, always. And so are you all ready to enter a jungle? I can't see you all, so I'm assuming it's a yes. I want you all to imagine the smell of spring rain and damp air. I want all of you to imagine the sound of chirping birds and croaking frogs. Maybe there's a stream close by and you can even hear the water flow. I'm going to walk you through the jungles of Himalaya, and so let's go. Yes, Christina, let's go. Okay. One spring morning, the Himalayan jungle welcomed a new generation of peachicks, including one named Mo. Each one was covered in a coat of yellow or brown feathers. Mo and his friends roosted high and low, caught ticks and termites, and screeched loud into the night. Mo loved to roost, hunt, and screech, but what he loved most of all was playing hide and seek. By the second summer, each peachick donned a crest. They grew flight feathers, tail feathers, fluff, fluff, fluff. Some had short tails, some had long. All the long-tailed peachicks turned into peacocks with bright, bold, beautiful feathers. All except Mo. Mo looked different. From the top of his crest to the tip of his tail, his feathers shone white. Mo didn't mind. The peacock still did everything together. But as time went by, hide and seek wasn't quite as fun as it used to be. Mo couldn't hide like the others. He didn't have bright, bold, beautiful feathers. Mo looked different and he began to feel different too. But his friends did what friends do. You're still a peacock. Birds of a feather, groomed together. Don't think about it. You'll be fine. Mo shook off his worries. He was so glad to belong to such a great group of peacocks. Soon the jungle announced its biggest day, the annual dance in the rain. The young peacocks couldn't wait to show off. First rain, first dance. They flocked to the color salon. They flew to the bird boutique. Rich in your reds, bright in your blues. All the peacocks pranced. They admired themselves, all except Mo. Even with a fluff and a trim, Mo's feathers were no match for the others. Mo looked different, Mo felt different, and now he also felt alone. But his friends did what friends do. You're still a peacock. Colors don't make the bird. You can do this. Let's learn the dance. Neck tight, feathers loose. Spread your tail. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Feathers swung open, the peacock strutted, they swayed, colors swirled all around. Mo's friend shouted, "Go, Mo, go!" But all he heard was, "No, Mo, no." And however hard Mo tried, he only saw what he didn't have: bright, bold, beautiful feathers. Mo looked different, Mo felt different, Mo felt alone, and now he was sad too. On the big night, everyone gathered to welcome the first rain. Everyone except Mo. Mo watched from a place in the trees. Soon, black clouds took over the dark sky and raindrops hit the ground. The peacocks were ready for the dance, but there was just one problem. It was too dark to see. The peacocks bumped into one another. They stepped on one another's trains. Their feathers rumpled and ruffled, and everyone was in a foul mood. Then thunder crashed and lightning flashed. Suddenly, Mo noticed a bright and brilliant glow. He straightened his slouch and loosened his wings. He looked all around until he realized the glow was coming from him. Right away, Mo took flight. In a swoop, he lit up the ground. Yes, Mo was different, but now Mo saw what he had had all along: bright, bold, beautiful feathers, and his crest felt like a crown. As lightning flashed, the hip hoppers croaked. He glows like the snow. The belly dancers trumpeted. He's as bright as a lotus. The rock and rollers roared, but we still can't see. Mo knew just what to do. He stood tall. He strutted and swayed. Then he fluttered his feathers and swung them open. Oh, I can't see. So the peacocks, then he's fluttered his feathers and swung them open. Let me read from my book. This is not clear at my end. As Mo danced, light flickered. The jungle glowed bright. At last, everyone could see. The peacocks fanned their feathers and danced together. Sounds of celebration echoed throughout the jungle. Mo smiled. He flaunted his plume as wide as he could. On and on he danced. On and on Mo called to the sky. Tee hoonk, tee hoonk, tee hoonk. That night the rains didn't stop, neither did Mo, and when his friend shouted again, he heard them loud and clear. Go, Mo, go! And then there are some fun facts about peacocks. And on the last page, we see Mo glowing bright, standing tall, strutting, swaying, flaunting his feathers. And I hope you all enjoyed the story. Back to you, Christina.
Hey, that was lovely. I'm sorry, I couldn't see while I was sharing, so I'm sorry. I don't know what happened with the words. Um, so I have a few questions for you guys. I think we can start with this one. Sita, why don't you tell us a little bit about what inspired Birds of a Feather?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that sparked the story for Birds of a Feather. Well, I was born and raised in India, and I grew up watching peacocks, so I have childhood memories of watching peacocks. Peacock is also a national bird of the country of India, and it's a very common bird as well. You would see them just roaming around and very comfortably with people. So, and then when we moved to the US, I read a lot of picture books with my kids here, and I realized that where there were so many stories with all kinds of featuring all kinds of birds and animals, there was no picture book featuring peacocks. So, and I'm sure I must have made a mental note of that because much later when I took up writing, I kind of knew just I wanted peacocks to be the front and center of one of my stories, at least one of my stories. And I'd say the story itself was inspired by my daughter's experiences. I think she, as a child, she was the only. She went to school where, unfortunately, there were no kids of color. So I remember her being the only brown child in her classroom for like almost from kindergarten to third grade. Shreya, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but yeah. So it was almost 4 years, and although this is her story to tell, but being a mother, from a mother's perspective, and having watched firsthand how self acceptance and knowing and loving who you are can be so, so empowering, is what really, really sparked the story for Birds of a Feather.
That's beautiful. Okay, so my next question is, how long did it take you to write Birds of a Feather? And did anything change from the first draft to the published version we have now?
So I wrote the first draft in 2016. And then in 2017, this story placed at the SCBWI Rising Kite Award for SCBWI Miami. With that, I soon landed an agent, and I think we sold the story in 2019 to Flamingo Books to be published in 2021. So yeah, it took 5 years from like first draft to the publication. And what changed? I think, yeah, my story was really, really long in the beginning. I had a lot of backstory to like where Mo came from, and what his family was like. And so there was a lot of backstory in the beginning. So that changed. Then Mo's name changed. He was earlier in my early drafts. He was Poe. His name was Poe. Somehow, I don't know, I was fine with it, but then one day it struck me that in India a peacock is called more in Hindi. So there I just found, I said, oh, I have to call him Mo, he has to be Mo. So that's, his name changed. And also the title changed. Earlier the title of the story was Go Mo Go, and we changed it to Birds of a Feather. It was actually my editor's suggestion, and I loved it so much, and I knew that this story, Mo's story, had to be Birds of a Feather. So those were the changes, yeah, from first draft to the published story.
Yeah, it's a really great title too. So,
yeah.
And Sita, how did you and Stephanie end up working together on this project, and what was that like?
Oh, yes. That's a great question. So once my story was acquired by Flamingo Books, they began their search for the right illustrator for my story, and we shortlisted a few, and then without a doubt, I think we all agreed that Stephanie's style was the perfect match for my story. And once Stephanie came on board, my words were hers to illustrate, and she has brought her own vision to this story. And so, and I got to see every stage, from the pencils to the finals, and in between there were 2 more stages. And when I saw the final artwork, my heart almost skipped a beat. It was phenomenal. It was an emotional moment for me to see the story that once lived in my head. The character Mo, who only lived in my head, to come alive on the pages. I could now see him glowing bright and dancing and celebrating himself on the pages. And I think Stephanie took the story to a visual level that was just way, way beyond my imagination. So,
well, thank you, Sita. That's so sweet. It's so wonderful. I know that when I started working, when I booked the project, I think that I was told somewhere along the way that it was your debut picture book. So I just felt like, especially precious about the whole process, because I wanted to make sure that your book was really beautiful and that it was everything that you dreamed it was going to be. So I just, threw a little bit extra of myself into it because I just wanted your first book to be so pretty.
I totally appreciate it.
I'm happy that you're happy.
I'm so happy.
And Stephanie, a question for you. You love to draw birds. It's your thing. So had you drawn peacocks before? And what kind of groundwork did you have to do?
So I hadn't actually drawn peacocks before, but my general rule is that if a picture book is about birds and the story is really good, I'm definitely doing it because I just love drawing birds. So, I kind of had an initial moment of panic because I usually draw like cute little tiny birds that aren't really complicated, and I was like, there's a whole other anatomy situation happening with peacocks. So I set about studying them. I watched like a ton of YouTube videos so I could really understand like how their wings worked, how their tail feathers worked, like what it looks like when they fly, where they roost. So it was a lot of nerdy, like researchy sort of moments, which I love. I actually have a BA in history, so I love any sort of I love the researchy part of picture books so much. It's so fun to just like find all of those little puzzles, like pieces that you're gonna like put together in the end to make a book. It's so satisfying. Love it.
It's amazing. So Sita, what is the feeling that you most hope your readers will come away with once they've finished reading Birds of a Feather?
Birds of a Feather is a story about self-acceptance. I think it's a journey to self-discovery. I believe that we all have unique characteristics. I strongly believe that we all have different talents. And my hope for the story, I just really, really hope that the story empowers children to find strength in the differences. And I just hope that it empowers them to embrace and love themselves for who they are. I think that's a critical first step in building confidence, self-confidence, and self-esteem in children. So that is the feeling that I really hope the readers take away from the story. Also, the story is also about inclusion and friendship, and so I hope it helps children understand the importance of being empathetic and being kind to, and really, really accepting others who are different. Yes, so those are two things.
Awesome. So I have a question for both of you now. What was your biggest challenge for you, Sita, in writing Birds of a Feather, and for you, Stephanie, in illustrating it?
For me in writing, I think I struggled most with the beginning of the story. When I started to write the story, I kind of knew what most challenges would be. I kind of knew the middle part. I also knew how I wanted to end my story. But I think I struggled the most with figuring out from where to start my story. So yes, that was the biggest challenge for me.
Okay, so mine was the same thing that I was excited about. It was the peacocks. Just mostly the tail feathers, because your first thought is, oh, peacocks are so beautiful. And then you think for a second, I have to draw these tail feathers, that just they're so detailed. The feathers are so detailed. So for me, the challenge was figuring out a way to do that really captured the movement of the story, but that also let me work a little bit smarter. So my poor little drawing hand wasn't falling off because I had drawn like 10,000 individual feathers or something. So it was finding that nice bridge between like the creativity and the being smart about it.
For each of you, do you guys have a favorite spread that you could show us or tell us about and tell us why it's your favorite?
Yes, I do. I have a favorite spread. So my favorite spread, well, there is not a spread that I don't love, but if I had to really, really pick, it has to be the one where Mo first discovers himself. This is my favorite one. I think there's a lot of movement in this one. I see a change happening inside of Mo. I see a twinkle in his eyes. I see him smiling. I see him celebrating himself, and his stance. Everything about this page, I just love. This is my favorite spread. And another thing that I love is here, where he is walking. He's walking with so much pride in himself, and I love how he's walking here. He's just so proud of himself. So these are my favorite things.
Awesome.
What about you, Stephanie?
So mine is actually totally opposite. Mine is like the first spread of the book. Only because the tiny little baby peacocks were the cutest little things ever to draw. I had so much fun, like looking at little references of fluffy, wuffy little pea chicks.
That's really cute. Yeah, he looks so cute.
Tiny Mo was just the cutest. I mean, like full-grown Mo is beautiful and super special too, but like tiny little baby
Mo. Yeah.
Just want to squish it.
So Stephanie, do you want to maybe tell us about the medium you used and how you approached illustrating Birds of a Feather? Show us.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if you're okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
Yes.
And I'm gonna show everybody part of my process. All right, so this is I'm just gonna take you all through like the entire process of one of the spreads. So one of the first things that I do when I start working on a picture book is I just fill up one of these small sketchbooks with just sketch studies and different ideas for things that I might want to do. In this case, I was thinking a lot about the peacocks and how I was going to express their markings, how I was going to do their tail feathers, how I was going to capture some of their movements and some of their shapes. So whole sketchbook full of just messy sketches that don't really make sense to anyone but me, probably. And then our next step in the process was to do thumbnail sketches. Just really tiny, easy sketches where I'm just kind of blocking in the basic idea of the story, the basic motion of all the pages. And then this gets sent to the art director and the editor so they could give a little bit of feedback. So some of these thumbnails, the final art ended up looking just like this, and then some of them actually had quite a lot of changes. So I always think that's an interesting part of the process. All right, so this is one of the interior spreads that Sita likes the most. It's a total accident that I picked this one to talk about.
Wow. I like the coincidence.
All right, so this was the original sketch that I submitted, and I sketch all this in Photoshop. I always start on paper in a sketchbook, and then when I'm ready to work on the final sketches, I'm always working in Photoshop and just looking back at my sketchbooks for some inspiration. So this was the original sketch. Then it got revised and we added in some more motion. So we had some more swooshing tail feathers and some more wings flapping around. So it really kind of filled up the page a little bit. And then we had one more revised sketch. And you can see we just brought Mo a little closer to the front and made him stand out since he was going to be glowing and needed to be the center of the story. Next up, I block in my flat colors. And this is one of like the most relaxing parts for me because I've already sort of worked out my color palettes. I've got everything thought out and I am just listening to a podcast, blocking in some flat colors and just having a nice time. And then this is where all of the texture comes in, all of the details get added in. And this is a really fun part too. This is where everything really comes to life. So this was the first version of this page. And then there are 3 more versions after this. So I forgot to add the rain. Sometimes you just get like really involved in the illustrating and something slides by, and then when you realize, you're like, oops, that was a major thing, but it's okay. And then we added some more rain, so it was a little bit more intense. And then the last thing that we did is we had just added some adjustments to the ground because some of the peacocks were kind of fading into the background, and we wanted to make sure that everything really stood out and looked super lovely. So that's the super condensed version of a thing that actually took like a year. Like I looked at I was digging through my sketchbook this morning and I started this book in, I think, May of 2019 and I finished it in May of 2020. So that's a super short version of that whole process.
That is so amazing, Stephanie. Aren't you guys like amazed what like the finished product looks like where she started from and what it looks like? I mean, this is totally amazing. I just loved seeing the whole process. It was so cool.
That was really, really cool that we got to see like behind the scenes there. I loved that. I've honestly not seen a lot of illustrators like show us, the making of.
Oh, I love
to see
hearing
more
the
of that.
process. Yeah, you should ask everyone from now on because we all love a good snoop. What happens?
This is beautiful. I'm so glad you shared your story and your work. This is a great process to see.
So before we go into Q&A with the audience, we have a surprise from a local partner, Flamingo Gardens. We have a little video clip for the audience that we're going to share. No.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathy Curtin and I'm the Director of Education here at Flamingo Gardens. Flamingo Gardens is a non-profit botanical gardens and wildlife sanctuary located in Davie, Florida. Our wildlife sanctuary gives home to permanently injured, human-imprinted, and non-releasable wildlife. While our focus is on native wildlife to South Florida and the Florida Everglades, anybody who's been to Flamingo Gardens knows that we're also very popular for our peacocks, or our peafowl. The peafowl are native to India, and they were brought to Flamingo Gardens in the 1930s by our founders, Floyd and Jane Gregg. Our peafowl are free roaming. They have been here since the 1930s, and we've seen generations of them born here. As mentioned in Birds of a Feather, the males are called peacocks, the females are called peahens, and the babies are called pea chicks. The peacocks are the ones with the bright blue necks and the long tail feathers. During mating season, you'll see their peacocks displaying their feathers in order to attract the peahens. You might see them doing their dance and hear the sound of their feathers shaking. It sounds a little like rainfall. Most peacocks will start losing their long tail feathers after mating season and will grow them back in the end of the winter. Older peacocks might not lose their tail feathers all year. The peahens are brown with green necks and do not grow the long tail feathers. We always tell the students there's a simple way to remember which are the boys and which are the girls. It's by the color of their neck. B is for blue, B is for boy, G is for green, G is for girl. And while the peahens don't have showy feathers that get all the attention, their brown feathers are very important because it helps them to camouflage their pea chicks, who are also born brown. Now, every once in a while, we will see a pea chick who is bright yellow. We know this pea chick is leucistic and is going to grow up to be white, just like the peacock in Birds of a Feather. They're not albino because they have blue eyes, not red. The leucistic females usually have a little bit of green around their necks, while the males are usually solid white. It's an anomaly why some of the pea chicks are born with leucism, but the white pea chicks and peahens do not produce more white peafowl. In fact, they are sterile and do not have offspring. Here we have Prince Charming. He is one of our leucistic peacocks. We know that he is a male or a peacock because he has the long, beautiful tail feathers. And it's always a treat to see Prince Charming spread his long tail feathers. It looks like lace blowing in the wind. while it always draws a crowd, he's not doing it for us. He's doing it for the peahens.
That
I'm
was
so
pretty
proud.
amazing.
Getting up. Well, that was a treat. That was a treat, isn't it? I hope you all enjoyed meeting the peacocks, learning some fun facts about them, and seeing our Prince Charming, flaunt his feathers. Yeah, so I just hope you enjoyed the surprise.
That was an amazing little. He looks just like him from the book, you know. So we're going to open it up for the audience Q&A. If you guys want to drop questions into the Ask a Question box, I'm going to go through them and ask a few questions before we let everyone go on and do their Saturday thing. So I think the first one I saw that I was going to ask was, well, here's one. Beautiful book and love the story. Do you have an idea what your next book will be about?
Yes, so my next book is about, it's about more family and connections and honoring family traditions. I think that's all I'm going to say right now.
Yeah.
But it is, again, a heartwarming picture book. That's what I like to write, but it's about all those things, yes.
And how did you guys, with all of the art you have to look at, how did you guys decide on like the final cover image that you chose?
So I submitted, I can't remember, I think probably like 3 to 5 just ideas for the cover. And then I actually didn't have an opinion. I was like, I love them all. And then Sita, you got to help pick the cover, right?
Yes. There were a couple of options, and I just loved what I saw. And I just knew, I guess, I did get a vote on that. And yeah, we knew this was going to be birds of a feather. You know? So.
And how did you guys work together? Like, were you did you have like Zoom calls, or did you kind of just work separately? You know, how did your partnership sort of work over the year?
We didn't even meet until after it was all finished. We just, I would get, Sita's notes through the art director or the designer, like, oh, she really loves it. She's so happy. I'm like, okay. We didn't actually meet until after.
Yeah, we never talked to the entire process. I got to see all the different stages, and I think that is an amazing part of this whole process, the picture book making process, because I don't think the illustrator and the author talks, and the illustrator brings their own vision. So it's just amazing how everything just comes together. You know, so me and Stephanie never talked. Yeah.
So another question here is, Sita, since you wrote it for your daughter, what does she think of the story, and did she have any input while you were writing it?
I don't think she had. I did read my story at every different stage to all my family members, to her as well, and get their insights and all. But Shreya, if you do want to say anything in the chat, how you feel about it. But I know she loves it. I know she really appreciates that I took that topic of self-acceptance and I made a story about it. So yes.
I think you kind of answered this, but I don't remember if you said specifically, but someone did ask how long the process of writing was from very first words to publication day.
Yes, it was 5 years. Yeah, I wrote the first draft in 2016 and it published 2021. So yes, 5 years.
5 years. Yeah. Okay. Looking through, there are a few that I think we got to. Is there, Stephanie, is there any other materials that you use to illustrate that you maybe haven't mentioned yet?
So I do most of my final artwork in Photoshop, but I always have like hand painted textures and hand painted bits that I scan in. So in this case, I had some like hand painted gouache textures that I scanned in and used in Photoshop. And then all of the shapes of the tail feathers, like the underlying shapes, I painted those in gouache and then scanned them in and then added all of my details and everything on top of that. So, I mean, honestly, it's probably like 80% Photoshop and then 20% like paint and scanning and steps.
And then here's a cool one. You guys are both such an inspiration. This is from Claudia. Which author and or illustrator has inspired you?
I'd say I really like writing heartwarming stories. So for me, the authors that have inspired me the most are Amy Krauss Rosenthal, Jacqueline Woodson, and Beth Ferry. It's hard to pick, but if I had to pick, then those three would be my inspiration.
Oh, that's lovely. So my favorite illustrator is Charlie Harper. He's a mid-century illustrator who just did these amazing bird and animal paintings. He was just such an inspiration. I love like the geometric shapes and the simplicity of it. So good.
And here I got a new question also. What is the most beautiful part of your author journey? And also what is the hardest? And this is for you, Sita and Stephanie, for the artist journey.
So what is the most beautiful part? I think for me, the most beautiful part has been connecting with the community. I think that has been very rewarding for me, to just know that I just feel that they're my people and I found this community. So that has been the most rewarding part for me. And what is the next question?
What was the hardest? What is the hardest part of the journey?
The hardest part is, I think, waiting forever because everything takes so long. And I think there's so many ups and downs and highs and lows through the publishing process. And it just takes forever. So I think being patient, patient really, really helps. And I think just waiting is the hardest part. Yes.
That I've heard that before.
All right, so the best part, and Sita, I can't believe you didn't say this, is actually getting the books. I feel like the first time that you get a book that has your art in it, it's just like, there's this thing in the world that people are gonna buy, and I made this, like I was part of this process.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah, it's just the craziest thing, like the first time you get a book that has your art, or like in your case, your words.
My words, it was unbelievable. That feeling is like, it was almost surreal for me. Like, oh, how it all lived in my head until then. I didn't even know for the 2 years like that there's a book in the making and you get to see it and you're like, oh my God, this is real.
And like it never gets old. You would think eventually that you would get used to just like seeing your books, but like every time like a box of books like arrives on the doorstep, I'm like, book day.
And your book goes and has like a kind of a life of its own. It's like it's all over the country in bookstores and finding readers that
so crazy.
It's just crazy to think about it. Yes.
It's so weird. And then like, I had an experience recently where one of my friends was like, hey, my daughter was taking, she was doing her virtual schooling on Zoom and she was like, they were reading a book out loud and I heard your name. Like it was one of the books that you had illustrated. It's like so weird.
I think that's so rewarding when kids, I think that's the most rewarding part of being children's author, when kids read their books and, you get to get the feedback and get to hear that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, while we're talking about that, another good thing is like when people tag you on Instagram with like pictures of like their kids reading your books.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So everyone tag Sita.
Yes, everyone please
Your children reading this book. It's the best feeling.
I would love to see pictures or hear about any thoughts about the books you read. So yes, please tag me.
Now we're getting a bunch of questions in. So let's see. For Stephanie, how did you get into drawing birds and discover Charlie Harper?
I actually don't remember not knowing of Charlie Harper. It's just been like just a long time love. I'm from West Virginia, and Charlie Harper is also from West Virginia. So I feel like I've just always known about his existence and his art. For birds, I actually started drawing them because I was at a weird spot where I knew I wanted to illustrate children's books, but I didn't really feel like I had like a solid style of making art. So I decided I was going to do a weekly drawing project. I was going to make one piece of art every week for a year, to sort of help myself work through like, finding my style. And I settled on birds because I just like them. I'm a nature person. I love birds. I think they're adorable. But I just thought that because their shapes were fairly simple, it was really going to help me with this project of like exploring my style and trying out different things to see what I liked. So, and then I was just hooked. I mean, I did like that. I drew birds for 52 weeks. And then I did the 100-day project, and I drew birds for 100 days after that. And then I just haven't really stopped since then. I just draw birds all the time. I love
it. I saw this question in the chat and also here. So I'm going to ask Stephanie, when you move from to Photoshop, do you incorporate sketches into the final art, trace your sketches, or redraw? There's a couple of people asking.
Yeah. So when I go into Photoshop, I'll just adjust my sketch down to about 25% opacity, and then I just draw on top of it. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking right now. I hope you guys can hear it. Yeah, I just draw on top of it. So my sketch isn't part of my final art. It's just there for reference, which is good because my sketches are sloppy. So just clean it up as I go.
And then I think I have two more questions for you guys. So the first is, would you guys ever consider working together again for a sequel for Mo? This was an audience question.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. That's a good thought. I haven't thought about it, but I would love to. And of course, with Stephanie, yes.
Of course, I would draw Mo again, of course.
And this is going to be my final question for today. But do you guys have any advice for hopeful future writers or illustrators that might be in our audience today?
Yes, as an author, I'd say write the stories that you want to tell, write what comes from the heart. I'd say write what you're really, really passionate about, and be patient, because this publishing journey is a rough one. But if you believe in your stories, if you're believing in what you've written, then it just helps staying on course. And it helps with not giving up, because that's very important. We want to tell our stories. So just write what comes from your heart.
Oh, I love that. So mine is sort of a two-parter. What every illustrator always says, draw every day, is like the most important thing. But I think that the most important thing is to get really comfortable making bad art. Just embrace that not every day when you sit down at your sketchbook is going to be a great day or even a good day, but sit down, do it anyway, learn something from even the days that don't turn out that well, and then just move on to the next day. And over time, you just improve, you get better and better and better. So embrace all that not so great art, because it leads to good stuff eventually.
True. That's so important.
Well, thank you guys so much for spending your Saturday with us, and of course everyone in the audience as well for tuning in. Sita, I think you wanted to say something.
I just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for celebrating with me and Stephanie our picture book, my debut picture book. This is a very special moment for me, and I'm so very glad that you were all a part of it. Thank you so much.
And from Books and Books, a big congratulations to you, Sita, and you, Stephanie, on your debut. Sita, we're hopeful that we can have a long bookstore author relationship with you. We're big fans. We're supporters. Again, for everyone watching this now or later, this green button below us, it works. It will get you a copy of Birds of a Feather that is signed from Books and Books. So again, we appreciate every single person who tuned in today. We're so happy to have spent some time with you guys, and we hope to see you at the next one.
All right. Thank you. Today. Bye.